Hello, everyone. So this is a presentation for the UX showcase for the Configure team. I am Arya Brahmi and I'm the Senior Product Designer for Configure. Let me go to presenter mode. So today I'm going to talk about the Terraform. Let me go back. So the Terraform managed state design. So Terraform falls into the category of infrastructure as code, which is managed by the Configure state. And before I start talking about the design, I'm going to briefly talk about what is Terraform. So Terraform is a tool for building, changing, and versioning infrastructure, safely and efficiently. So basically, Terraform is an infrastructure as code tool where the DevOps or platform engineer, so Devon or Priyanka, can describe the end state of their infrastructure, and Terraform will create this infrastructure for them. There are a lot of benefits because you can use source code management in order to create and control your infrastructure, similarly to the application code. So what is a Terraform state? A Terraform state is a file that stores the infrastructure state and configuration. So every time Terraform runs, the state file is created or is updated into a new version if it already exists. And it's essentially connecting the configuration to the real world resources. So what you have configured in your configuration file that you want, for example, that many clusters, it links the configuration to the actual clusters. It's usually stored in a remote backend so that teams can collaborate. Because every time you edit your Terraform configuration, mouse problems, you have to download the state file and then it will be updated when you apply the changes. So what we did in 13.0, the configure team introduced the GitLab managed Terraform state, which means that we enabled users to use GitLab as their remote storage for the Terraform state files. Most users I have spoken to use S3 buckets to do that. And we want to give them an alternative for benefits I will discuss later. So we did introduce a backend storage, but we haven't provided for a way to view and manage the state files. And usually users are actually looking for the state files in GitLab. And this is where design comes in. So the reason for providing this backend in GitLab was for seamless Terraform management through one tool, which is GitLab's goal anyway. So there are less tool integrations. Users don't have to go to Amazon and configure their remote storage. There is no need for external management of users. So the users that are assigned to a project in GitLab will be able to access the maintainer, specifically the backend storage. And finally, we can provide linked information of state file versions to CI/CD, which is invaluable in my opinion. Finally, there is some cost optimization, so the users can avoid the extra costs of paying for remote external backend storage. So the job to be done here is, if I'm managing my organization's infrastructure via code, I need to view and manage my infrastructure's state and versions so that I can debug and fix infrastructure changes as well as investigate compliance issues. So let's go to design. The proposal started with an issue as usual. So the proposal is to introduce a UI so that users can perform various actions on the state file. It's quite vague, so let's go to the design explorations to see what that involved. So the design process I followed was to pick up the issue and do high-level design explorations of how we're going to introduce it to GitLab. So that was basically discovering the vision for the complete feature, how the user would discover the feature, and how they would navigate to the state files. Then I identified the design MVCs from these high-level explorations and created issues for each design MVC. And then, because there were a lot of issues, I created an epic to host the design issues. So following that, I prioritized the issues based on what made sense and started iterative design on each design MVC. That was done in collaboration with the engineering team. So every iteration I do, I involve the engineering team so that uh, we can discuss the feasibility and also whether the information I have included on the screen is what the users would be looking for, some sort of quick user feedback. I also try to involve the infrastructure team for user feedback. I got one reply, which is better than nothing, but hopefully in the future, I can get more information. So to give you a sense of the high-level explorations, this is kind of how I go on about it. I start sketching the flow, and then the basic high-level components, and also add my questions or comments about how I think it should work. So following that, these are the broken down issues. So maybe it would be worth going to the explorations to take it one by one. So the first thing is, how do users discover the state files? The first place, if it's a Terraform project, then a state file is produced automatically through a commit. So an idea would be to link the state file here, and another idea was to add it here as I've commented on the summary of the project. Following that, we need the Terraform menu in the left-hand side navigation. So in the initial explorations, we were aiming to create an infrastructure navigation menu, but this is not happening this milestone. So we're gonna add the Terraform menu to operations. Next, the user needs to see a list of state files within the project. So, and then some ideas for future features in the same navigation. Then if they click into the state file, they go to the state file details page, and these are two design explorations, very high level of how that would be. I don't think, and then the state file details page, very high level explorations, sorry, with a lot of questions asked here. And going back here, so these are all the issues I have linked to my presentation. And finally, we need a design for the versions of the state file, which would be in the details page as well. So that would be a tab possibly here. So after that, I picked up each issue and did higher fidelity explorations. So the first one is to introduce a project stat entry for a project when a project has a state file. So the idea behind it is, as soon as we know that there is a state file within a project, we will introduce a component on the screen for state file. I chose this pattern in the end, as the state file is automatically produced and not edited by the user, which was my understanding for the files linked here. The next step is to introduce a Terraform project. So this is just the MVC, design MVC for that, where Terraform is introduced in operations. And next we have the listing, which is actually what I'm working on. Well, it's close to completion. So there are a lot of ideas here. So this is a screen with a lot of questions, and then the evolution of the screen based on the feedback, where we have added pipeline and commit information. And we have a second design, which is a table and kind of splits the information. We want to do solution validation on this. Next are the actions that we want to allow project maintainers to perform on the list. So I introduced actions on each row. And for destructive actions, like remove, excuse me, these are several tooltips. And then for destructive actions, we want to show a model with information what's going to happen if you decide to remove the state file from GitLab. And finally, I'm working on the details page, which is the ongoing work, and the remaining work would be support versioning. I just have 2 low fidelity designs here. So the next steps is to finish the design for the state details page and version support, and do solution validation for several things we are unsure about, and the file state listing, and potentially the details page. 2 items are proposed for build in 13.6, which is going to be at the same time as solution validation, but we'll see how we can manage that. So with that, I'm going to close. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Maria. This is an amazing presentation, I have to tell. I love the approach from the low fidelity to the high fidelity with those amazing hand sketches. I haven't seen those in a while, and a really, really creative approach. And I also like how you're working in the iterations and MVCs, breaking down things. So thanks for showcasing that. That was a great process.
Thank you.
Anyone else has comments or questions?
I have a question. I also put it in the agenda. I also wanted to say I really enjoyed seeing your low fidelity to high fidelity transition. That was awesome. You mentioned that you had a hard time getting internal feedback from our infrastructure team, which I know is actually especially important for Configure, because those are not easy users to get in contact with, easy users to recruit. So we need their feedback. It's really important. So my question, part of my question is, why was it so hard? But you don't have to answer that here. But then the other part of my question is, what can the UX leadership team do to help you get that response from our internal team?
Great questions. So I don't know. I usually ping the infrastructure team without specifically pinging any people. I don't want to put the burden to specific people. Oh, I need your feedback. So usually my message doesn't get any replies. So one person replied and I asked them, are you okay to keep providing feedback? And they said yes. So then I pinged this person specifically. I think so, because the infrastructure team, I guess people do different jobs depending on their role. It would be good to create a user base from our internal infrastructure team that I know the names of, and I can ping them directly and ask them the questions I need to.
Yeah, we can absolutely make that happen, because what I would like to see us doing is treating our internal users the same way we treat our external users. So it's beyond just, here's an issue, can you give me feedback? It's, I have a research project, here are my questions, here's how I'm going to get you through this so I can get my answers. And that is, if you're struggling to make that happen, I totally understand why. Don't feel like you have to do that by yourself. You've got Justin, you've got Valerie, you've got me. We can help move that forward. So please let us know how we can help you.
Okay, perfect. I think the solution architects would be another team, just as an addition, because they know what the customers want. So
yep, happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Just stopping the recording. Thanks again, Maria. That